I stood there in silence, suitcase in one hand, the plastic motel key dangling like an insult. The air reeked of bleach and mildew. Room 6. No heat, no dignity. Just four stained walls and a ceiling that sagged like it had given up too. "She's lucky to have a roof," my son had texted. Lucky. As if survival was a gift. As if I hadn't poured decades into his life like it was the only thing that mattered. They slept under glass chandeliers. I slept beside a buzzing light and a roach trap. So I stayed quiet, waited. Then I bought the resort they bragged about on Instagram and made sure they checked in under my name. All right. Before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor. Subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. The Pine View Motel looked like the kind of place people went to disappear. One flickering vacancy sign buzzed weakly above the cracked asphalt lot, casting a sickly red glow on the broken curb. Margaret stayed behind the wheel for a full minute after parking, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing anchoring her to reality. She'd thought Tyler might change his mind when he saw her on the porch, suitcase in hand, face too tired to fake pride. But his words had been cold, mechanical, like a door locking from the inside. "The guest room's not a shelter. You're not staying here." Now she stood in front of a peeling door labeled "Office," the fluorescent light above buzzing like a trapped fly. Inside, the desk clerk looked up briefly, his eyes as tired as hers, and slid a cheap registration form across the counter. "One night, $29. Cash or card. No pets, no smoking, no refunds." She nodded. "Card." The key was plastic, chipped at the corner, dangling from a neon orange tag that read, "Room 6." It felt like a motel out of a bad movie, one where nothing good ever happened. The hallway stank of bleach and lingering cigarette smoke. Doors lined up like teeth in a crooked jaw. Her suitcase's broken wheel clacked against the uneven linoleum with every dragging step. A soda can lay crushed in the corner, forgotten by both guests and staff. Room 6 had a door that stuck when she pushed. Inside, the air was thick and sour. Old sweat, overused disinfectant, and something moldy lurking beneath the surface. The wallpaper peeled at the corners, curling like dried leaves. The carpet was damp near the bed. She stepped around it. The bedspread looked like it hadn't been changed since the 80s. Muted earth tones in a swirled pattern that reminded her of something rotting. Ceiling tiles sagged above her, one marked by a sprawling brown stain, like a shadow burned into the plaster. She sat down gingerly on the edge of the bed, the mattress hissing with age. Her back ached from driving, her chest ached from everything else. Her phone buzzed in her jacket pocket. Brittany. She's lucky to have a roof. No punctuation, no warmth. Just a judgment in text form. Margaret stared at it, thumb hovering above the screen. She considered replying, something sharp and honest. But what was the point? She locked the phone and set it face down on the wobbly nightstand. Outside, the traffic was constant. Tractor trailers thundered by on the highway, rattling the paper-thin windows. The curtain, brown, dusty, fluttered every time a rig passed. Headlights slipped across the ceiling like prison searchlights, hunting for someone who escaped. She lay back fully clothed, arms folded across her stomach. The bed creaked beneath her like it didn't want her there. The ceiling stain loomed overhead, a grotesque shape she couldn't look away from. It reminded her of a scabbed wound, or maybe a map, of where she'd been, or where she was stuck. The phone rang. Ruth. Margaret sat up quickly, heart thudding. She answered on the second ring. "Margaret?" Ruth's voice was lined with concern and caffeine. "You all right?" Margaret swallowed. Her voice was thinner than she expected when she answered. "I'm in a motel." A pause. "Where?" She shook her head even though Ruth couldn't see it. "Doesn't matter. Just somewhere off Route 40. Another pause, Longer this time. What happened? Tyler said I couldn't stay, not even a night. Said the garage was full and the guest room was off limits to drama. Like I'm some kind of infestation. Ruth didn't speak immediately. The silence felt like a kindness, a space to breathe without filling it with empty words. I didn't ask for anything big, Margaret said quietly. Just one night. A warm place. I even offered to sleep on the damn couch. And he turned you away. She nodded, then realized the gesture was useless. Yeah, like I was a problem he thought he solved years ago. There was a sigh on the other end of the line, tired, frustrated, and full of words Ruth didn't say. I'm not calling to ask for anything, Margaret added. I didn't know where else to let the sound land. A moment passed. You've always been the strong one, Ruth said. Even when you shouldn't have had to be. Margaret let out a dry laugh. Strong doesn't get you a place to sleep. No, but it gets you back up when people want you to stay down. The line went quiet again, just the sound of breathing on both ends. Then Ruth asked gently, Are you angry, Margaret? Margaret looked back up at the ceiling tile. That damn stain. I don't know. You sure about that? Her hand tightened around the phone. Angry? No, that wasn't it. Not exactly. Anger was sharp, quick. This was deeper. It was something that had been growing quietly inside her for years. Something darker, colder, more patient. She didn't answer. Okay, Ruth said softly. Then maybe just sit with it. Whatever it is. The call ended not long after. Margaret held the phone in her lap for a while, staring at the wall. Then she stood and walked to the small mirror above the sink. Under the buzzing fluorescent bulb, her reflection looked unfamiliar, like someone watching her through glass. Margaret sat cross-legged on the motel bed, surrounded by the brittle remains of her past. Bank folders, dog-eared envelopes, manila files scribbled in her own handwriting. The heater rattled every few seconds like it was dying one breath at a time, but she didn't notice anymore. The folder she was looking for was buried at the bottom of the duffel bag, wrapped in an old cardigan for safekeeping. She hadn't opened it in years. Maybe that was the problem. Her hands trembled as she unzipped the pouch. Not from nerves, but something else. Anticipation, fear, maybe even hope. She didn't know yet. She flipped through a stack of statements, mostly closed accounts, disconnected utilities, and one overdraft notice from a lifetime ago. But halfway through the folder, she found it. AmeriFirst Growth Fund, custodial account. Last statement, June. She blinked. Custodial. That was the account she'd opened back when she was working for the regional office, long before Tyler started borrowing money like it was air. The company matched 3% if you left it untouched for a decade. She had. She logged in from her phone. An old password she was sure she'd forgotten surfaced without effort. The numbers loaded slowly. Her leg bounced as the screen refreshed. Then it appeared. $218,747.32. And Margaret didn't move. For a full minute she didn't even breathe. She hadn't counted on it. Hadn't remembered. Had assumed the fund had been cannibalized somewhere in the chaos of divorce, debt, disaster. But it was there. And it was hers. Her eyes scanned the details. The account had shifted to self-management 5 years ago, which explained why no advisor had ever called. Under succession preferences, her stomach clenched. Primary beneficiary, Tyler Caldwell. Secondary, N-E-N, A. She stared at his name like it was carved into a headstone. Bold letters. No shame. Her hands curled into fists. The same man who said she wasn't worth a guest room, who stood with arms folded while she stood outside in the rain, was slated to inherit everything if she died. Her throat went dry. Tyler didn't know about this money. He never had. She'd made sure of it. But somehow, Somewhere in a moment of exhaustion or poor judgment, she must have added him as a default beneficiary years ago, back when things were fragile but still salvageable. That had been a different Margaret, one who still made excuses for people who drained her, one who believed blood meant loyalty. That woman was gone. She reached for her phone, fingers steady now. Paul Whitaker, attorney at law. It rang twice before he picked up. Margaret? Paul's voice still had that scratchy courtroom rasp she remembered from when he helped her finalize the divorce 10 years back. You all right? She exhaled. Not really, but I'm getting there. There was a pause. The kind that came from someone who sensed the ground was about to shift. I need to make changes to my estate, she said. Fast. Paul cleared his throat. You have something in mind? I want to remove Tyler Caldwell from every document he's ever touched. If he so much as thinks he's getting a penny, I want that thought to die in his throat. A beat. Well, Paul said slowly, that's not hard. We can change everything. Bank accounts, will, trust allocations, retirement, that investment fund. I'll send the paperwork tonight if you've got email access. I do. He lowered his voice. Are you planning to liquidate? Margaret looked around the room, at the water-stained ceiling, the clattering heater, the warped mirror. She stood up, crossing to the window. She peeked between the curtains at the dark stretch of road beyond. The sky had the gray-orange hue of gas station halos, cold, detached. Not yet, she said, but I'm not leaving it untouched either. I've got something to build now. Paul was quiet for a moment. Then, I remember that tone, from your deposition. You're not looking to survive this time, are you? She smiled faintly. No, Paul. I'm looking to win. He laughed, low and approving. Then let's begin. She ended the call and stood still, the silence pressing in again. But now it felt different. Less suffocating, more surgical. She turned back to the folder and slipped the statement into her purse. Her heart beat slower now, but heavier, with purpose. She sat back on the bed, pulled her laptop from its sleeve, and opened a new document. Subject: Posthumous Redirection Proposal. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, then began to type. The bell above the door let out a tired chime as Margaret stepped into the warmth of Ruth's cafe. The smell of roasted espresso beans, almond pastries, and aged wood wrapped around her like a long overdue hug. She'd spent countless mornings here over the years, book club meetings, quiet Sundays, refuge after fights. But today, it felt different, like she was stepping into a war room. Ruth looked up from behind the counter. Her expression shifted the moment she saw Margaret, eyebrows narrowing, jaw tightening. No fake smiles. She walked out from behind the espresso machine without a word, hugged her tightly, then led her to the back corner table, the one with the mismatched chairs and the view of the street. A waitress set down 2 mugs without being asked. Margaret knew Ruth hadn't told her to. The staff here understood the language of silence. I didn't think he'd actually say no, Ruth said after a long sip of her black coffee. Not to your face. Margaret stirred her creamer in slowly. He didn't even hesitate. Bastard, Ruth said, not loudly, but with enough edge that the air around them seemed to stiffen. Margaret looked down at her cup. The garage was full, that's what he said. The garage. Ruth's fingers curled around the ceramic like she was choking it. You were outside his house, Margaret, with a bag. You look like hell, and he turned you away. She nodded. What did you end up doing? Ruth asked, voice softer now. Pineview Motel, $29 a night. No pets, no parties, no dignity. She smiled bitterly. The carpet was damp and the ceiling was stained. I stared at it all night. Ruth's mug hit the table hard enough to rattle both their spoons. Then buy the goddamn place, bulldoze it, and build something better, something they'll beg to check into. Margaret looked up. What? Ruth leaned in, eyes locked. You've got money, right? Real money? Margaret paused. Yeah, I do. Then stop crawling and start climbing. Buy the dream. Buy the resort they brag about in Christmas cards. Make it yours. Name the damn rooms after people who didn't leave you on a doorstep. Margaret blinked. Not because she was surprised by Ruth's fire, but because something in her brain clicked into place, like tumblers in a lock. You think I should turn this into a business plan? She asked, but her voice was different now. Low. Focused. No, Ruth said. Turn it into a weapon. The cafe noise faded into the background, dishes clinking, indie music playing overhead, the faint whirl of milk frothing, but none of it touched her anymore. Margaret's phone buzzed on the table. The screen lit up with Tyler's name. She hesitated, didn't touch it. A preview of the message slid down. Maybe next year you'll stay somewhere nicer, Mom. Her breath caught. Not because of what it said, but because of what it didn't. No apology, no guilt, no recognition that she'd slept on a stained mattress under a cracked ceiling because of him. He wasn't checking in. He was gloating. Ruth leaned over and saw the text. Her face turned to stone. Don't respond, she said. I wasn't going to. You respond, he wins. He gets to believe he still matters. Margaret locked the phone and set it down, screen first, then leaned back and exhaled like she'd just put something to rest. I've been surviving, she said slowly, for a long time, stretching pennies, swallowing pride, keeping quiet. But that text? She tapped the table once. That just bought him front row seats to the worst mistake he's ever made. Ruth smiled darkly. Now that's the Margaret I know. Margaret reached into her bag and pulled out a notepad. Spiral bound, the kind she used back when she did conference planning. She flipped past old sketches of seating charts and vendor lists. Then she tore out a blank page and wrote at the top in capital letters, Next Moves. She circled it once, slowly, intentional. Ruth watched in silence. Margaret spoke without looking up. No one's going to hear this plan until it's too late. Not Tyler. Not Brittany. Not anyone who stood by and watched. The pen hovered in her hand, just above the page. Paul Whitaker's office sat 2 blocks from the courthouse, in a sandstone building that had once been a bank. The kind of place with brass door handles, dusty law books lining the shelves, and carpeting that smelled like old money and stronger coffee. Margaret stepped through the door at 9:01 a.m. sharp. The front desk receptionist greeted her by name, offered her water. She declined. Her focus was steel-bound, the notepad tucked under her arm like a legal weapon. Paul was waiting in his glass-walled office, sleeves rolled, tie loosened. He stood when she entered, and his face, lined but calculating, softened just enough to remind her why she'd trusted him after the divorce. He closed the door behind her. No small talk, no distractions. He gestured to the thick stack of paperwork on the desk. Everything's here. Margaret sat. The leather chair creaked beneath her, but she didn't shift. Her eyes scanned the first page. Legalese, transfer requests, beneficiary removals, authorizations for liquidation. Paul handed her a pen. Once this is signed, the fund will begin releasing within 3 business days. Tax protected, rolled into the holding account we discussed. From there, acquisition or investment. Your call. She flipped to the final page, the one with the asset list. 3 properties had been flagged under private auction status, boutique hospitality investments in the Southwest. 2 were desert resorts outside Tucson. The third, just north of Sedona, overlooked a canyon with red cliffs that lit up like fire at sunrise. She pointed at it. That one. Paul nodded, sliding over a new packet. Privately owned by a retiring couple. Mid-century structure, 16-room capacity. Spa permits already in place. Views for miles. They're looking for a clean cash exit. No negotiations. Then don't negotiate, Margaret said, already signing. She moved fast, precise initials on every line, signatures crisp. Paul watched her with a faint smirk. It wasn't condescending. It was admiration, quiet and earned. Most people hesitate, he said. I don't have time for that anymore, she replied. He leaned back in his chair. Do you want to name the trust after yourself? Margaret paused, then shook her head. No, not me. He raised a brow. Then what? Her lips curled. Call it Three Pines Holdings. Personal meaning? There were 3 pine trees outside my childhood home, she said. The only place I ever felt safe. Paul nodded, jotting it down without another word. By 10:17 a.m., every document was signed. At 10:38, she walked into the Yavapai County Clerk's office, a manila folder clutched under her arm and purpose in her stride. The building smelled of dust, disinfectant, and bureaucracy, like every government office anywhere in America. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A toddler screamed somewhere near the vehicle registration line. Margaret stepped to window 3, where a woman with cropped hair and a nameplate reading Carla Henderson, deputy clerk, was sorting through laminated forms. Carla looked up. How can I help you? I need to record property acquisition and a change of corporate structure, Margaret said. Carla smiled. Been a while since I've heard that in person. Everyone's hiding behind DocuSign these days. Margaret handed over the folder. Carla flipped through it with an approving grunt. Three Pines Holdings. I like that. Stamp, stamp, stamp. The sound echoed firm and final as the red ink bled onto the legal documents. Carla looked up. Congratulations. You just became the majority owner of a luxury resort. Margaret exhaled. Long, quiet, controlled. Thanks. You opening it as is? Carla asked, curious now. Or renovating? Margaret gave a small smile. Depends on how much fire it needs to burn off. She turned without waiting for a reply and walked out into the blinding Arizona sun. The light hit her face hard, unforgiving, and full of heat, but she didn't squint. She welcomed it. The wind picked up, dry and sharp, tugging at the loose strands of her hair as she stepped off the curb. Traffic moved slow on the downtown street. People passed her by without knowing what had just shifted. But she knew, and somewhere, soon, they would. The restaurant was one of those upscale chain steakhouses that pretended not to be a chain. Dim lighting, polished wood, cloth napkins folded with military precision. The kind of place where people ordered $18 cocktails and left Yelp reviews about ambiance. Margaret sat at the far end of the booth, iced tea sweating in her hand, a wedge of lemon balanced on the rim. The AC was too cold, the music too soft, the conversation worse than both. Tyler leaned back with a glass of Merlot and that smug mid-story grin he'd perfected somewhere around age 12. Brittany hung off his words like he was giving a TED Talk on success. And the spa, he said, pausing for effect. Top tier, 2 infinity pools, and a fire pit lounge facing the cliffs. I mean, it's not just a getaway. It's destination living. Margaret sipped her tea. No reaction. Ruth, sitting beside her, tilted her glass of water just enough to hide a twitching smirk. Brittany pulled her phone from her purse, manicured fingers scrolling. We booked the corner suite, the Sequoia View King. Look. She turned the screen toward Margaret without waiting for interest. It's got floor-to-ceiling windows, rainfall shower, the works. Margaret leaned slightly. Confirmation email. The resort's name in bold. Red Hollow Canyon Spa and Retreat. Her resort. Her signature, still drying on the purchase agreement, sat locked in her motel room safe. Tyler clinked glasses with Brittany. It's a bucket list spot, Took months to get a weekend. High season's brutal up there. February's their sellout window, Brittany chimed in. We lucked out on a cancellation. Margaret took another sip. The lemon shifted and fell into the tea with a soft splash. Ruth turned her head, pretending to scan the wine list. She whispered just loud enough for Margaret to hear. Should we send champagne to their suite when they arrive? Maybe include a signed card? Margaret didn't laugh, but her lips twitched, almost imperceptibly. Tyler leaned forward. You know, Mom, maybe next year we'll bring you. Upgrade you from the motel scene? Brittany giggled. Spa robes beat ceiling stains. Margaret looked up slowly. Her expression was unreadable. Maybe I'll already be there, she said, calm as water. Tyler snorted, not catching the undertow. Sure, you gonna valet your Corolla on the cliffs? Margaret smiled faintly and took another drink. She didn't blink. Ruth dropped her fork a little harder than necessary. Funny how the people doing the most flexing usually have the least footing. Tyler rolled his eyes. Can we not do one dinner without a sermon, Ruth? You're right, Ruth said coolly. Wouldn't want you choking on irony. A pause settled in the booth. One of those shifts in air where everyone knows something just happened but can't quite name it yet. Margaret set her glass down and reached for her menu. Do they still do the pecan-crusted trout here? Why are you asking me? Tyler huffed. I'm just making conversation. He leaned back again, glancing toward the bar like he wished he were somewhere more interesting. Order what you want. It's on me tonight. Generous, Ruth muttered. Must be the resort glow. Brittany glanced between them, her mouth twitching like she'd missed the joke and didn't like that feeling. Margaret studied the menu in silence, but in her mind she was already picturing them walking into her resort lobby, gawking at the glass sculptures, marveling at the view, handing their bags over to a concierge trained to smile without flinching. She imagined them lounging in the spa, sipping cocktails poolside, bragging about exclusivity. She imagined the look on Tyler's face the moment he learned who signed the checks. She didn't need to humiliate him. She just needed him to realize the best revenge wasn't explosive. It was elegant, lethal by degrees. Margaret closed the menu. I'll have the trout, she said to the approaching server. And for you, ma'am? The server asked Ruth. Ruth grinned. Whatever she's having. As the server walked off, Ruth leaned close. They really don't know, do they? No, Margaret said, lifting her glass again. But they're about to spend a small fortune making me richer. The motel room felt different now. It was still a box of peeling wallpaper, noisy plumbing, and a heater that coughed more than it warmed. But tonight, it felt less like failure and more like a bridge. Margaret sat cross-legged on the bed, papers spread in front of her like blueprints for a life no one saw coming. The ownership documents were thick and heavy, printed on cotton fiber stock, sealed with a gold foil stamp that caught the weak lamplight just right. Her name, not Tyler's, not anyone else's, was typed in bold caps above the embossed seal. Margaret Ellen Caldwell, Managing Director. Three Pines Holdings property owner. Red Hollow Canyon Spa and Retreat. She ran her fingers over the notary embossment like it was Braille for a language she'd finally learned to speak. The edges were crisp, unforgiving, permanent. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. A quiet knock came at the door. 2 soft taps, 1 pause, then a third. Ruth. Margaret opened the door and let her in. Ruth took one look at the papers on the bed and broke into a grin. Well, damn. Margaret exhaled slowly, stepping aside as Ruth entered. Feels strange, knowing it's real. It's not strange, Ruth said. It's overdue. They sat together for a moment, Ruth picking up one of the pages and holding it to the light. You ever think you'd own a spa? She asked. I didn't think I'd own anything again, Margaret said. After the divorce. After everything. Ruth looked at her. You didn't just buy a property. You took back your name. You took back you. And then, without warning, Ruth leaned in and wrapped her in a hug. Not a polite embrace. Not a pat on the back Midwestern squeeze. It was firm. Real. The kind of hug you only give when you've watched someone fall apart and then stitch themselves back together, thread by bloodied thread. Margaret didn't cry, but her hand trembled slightly when she picked up the final folder, the one marked Operations. Inside were staff rosters, manager bios, and upcoming guest reports. Brittany and Tyler's names were there. Their check-in flagged for Friday. Corner suite, 2-night stay, spa package included. Her burner phone buzzed against the nightstand. A voicemail. Tyler. She didn't answer. Instead, she let it roll to message, waited 5 seconds, then tapped play. His voice came through bright, self-congratulatory, and vaguely drunk. Hey, Ma. Just wanted to say thanks again for dinner. Britt's already packing her bikini like we're heading to the Bahamas or something. We'll toast to paradise this weekend. Maybe send you a postcard if they still make those. Anyway, take care of yourself. Maybe book a massage next year. You could use one. Beep. Margaret stared at the screen, then swiped up and hit delete. Gone. She stood, stretched her back, then walked to the small kitchenette. The overhead light flickered once before holding steady. She opened a box of pasta, set water on to boil, and began to hum softly. Low, steady, almost a lullaby. Ruth watched her from the bed, eyes narrowing with a knowing look. You okay? Margaret nodded. Better than okay. She dropped the pasta into the pot, stirring slowly with a plastic fork. You ever think, she said over the sound of water bubbling, how many people live their whole lives never realizing the person they walked over might be the one signing their credit card slips one day? Ruth chuckled. Poetic justice. No, Margaret corrected gently. Strategic justice. She stirred again, then reached for the bottle of olive oil she'd bought from the corner grocery. Friday, she said, almost to herself. They'll walk into that lobby thinking they're gods. And? Margaret twisted the cap open, let the oil drizzle into the pan. And there'll be guests in my house. She looked up then, eyes calm but focused, like someone who'd stopped waiting for apologies and started building legacies. Outside, a semi rolled past on the highway, shaking the window pane. Inside, Margaret hummed louder. Margaret sat at the edge of the motel bed, legs tucked beneath her, the room lit only by the weak desk lamp and the glow of her phone screen. The heater groaned again, but she didn't flinch. She scrolled in silence, her thumb gliding slowly, deliberately, like she was sifting through evidence. Brittany's latest post filled the screen, a photo of 2 overstuffed roller bags on polished hardwood, a sun hat perched artfully on top. Caption, off to paradise, spa days, plus poolside cocktails, finally living the dream. Location tag, Red Hollow Canyon Spa and Retreat. Hashtags, Pi Blessed Matcha Resort Life, Hash, worth it. The comments were already pouring in. OMG, where is this? You two deserve it. So jealous. Take me with you next time. You earned this, girl. Margaret's finger hovered over the reply bar. She could have typed a dozen things, could have posted the ownership deed, could have dropped a veiled quote about wolves and sheep. Instead, she typed 3 simple words. We'll see. She hit send, then locked the phone and tossed it gently onto the mattress beside her. Behind her, Ruth's voice cut through the silence. You're evil, she said, grinning. Margaret turned slightly. Ruth was leaned against the dresser, holding a mug of Motel coffee with a plastic stirrer bobbing inside. She'd seen the post, too. That's not evil, Margaret replied. That's restraint. Ruth chuckled, then took a sip. She's gonna have no idea what hit her. She never does, Margaret said, standing. She crossed to the kitchenette table and sat down, pulling a slim leather checkbook from her purse. The kind of old-fashioned ledger most people had stopped using a decade ago. Margaret hadn't. She flipped to the back, where her monthly logs were still written in clean, looping cursive. Everything itemized, every cent tracked. She added a new line. Deposit, Three Pines Holdings LLC disbursement, $218,947.32. Then, slowly and without ceremony, she drew a double underline beneath it. I don't want revenge that burns out, she said as she wrote. I want one that compounds interest. God, I miss this version of you, Ruth murmured. I missed her too. The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was grounded. Like the moment before curtain rise, still, but thick with knowing. Margaret reached for her laptop next, powering it up on the same table. A ping echoed through the room as her inbox refreshed. Subject, Red Hollow title transfer. Finalized from Paul Whitaker, attorney at law. She opened it. Margaret, recording is complete. Title change is now live with the Arizona State Registrar. Transition team reports full compliance and file handover. You are officially the sole owner and legal operator of Red Hollow Canyon Spa and Retreat. Let them check in. Let them brag. They'll be doing it under your roof now. P. Margaret closed her eyes briefly, not to rest, to mark the moment. It's done, she said. Ruth straightened. All of it? Every last piece. Margaret stood, walked back to the bed, and picked up her phone again. She scrolled down Brittany's post, past the filtered suitcase photo, past the cloying emoji parade, to the comment she'd just written. We'll see. It sat there like a fuse, waiting for a spark. She turned the phone off completely this time. No buzz, no light. Let them pack their swimsuits, she said, as she headed to the bathroom to wash up. Let them post every cocktail and spa robe. Ruth raised an eyebrow. You're not nervous? About what? Margaret said, pausing in the doorway. About seeing them walk through those doors? Margaret didn't blink. They've walked over me long enough. I'm ready for them to walk to me. The automatic glass doors whispered open with a soft hiss as Tyler and Brittany stepped into the grand lobby of Red Hollow Canyon Spa and Retreat. Air conditioning kissed their sun-warmed faces, carrying the subtle scent of eucalyptus, bergamot, and something vaguely floral, curated serenity. Their matching sunglasses slid down their noses as they paused to take it all in, floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the red rock cliffs, a stone fireplace surrounded by low, hand-carved chairs, and a receptionist desk framed by cascading succulents and soft, golden lighting. Wow, Brittany breathed. Okay, this is exactly what I wanted. Tyler grinned smugly, dragging his designer duffel bag behind him. Told you, 5-star experience. Their Yelp has like 0 bad reviews. People practically worship this place. Brittany snapped a selfie on the marble floor, her sunglasses pushed up into her perfectly tousled hair. She held the phone high to get the lobby mural behind them. Smile, she said. We're about to go full resort life. Tyler leaned in. Click. They didn't notice the woman seated across the room, half shadowed by one of the tall stone pillars. Margaret sat in a sculpted leather armchair, legs crossed, sipping sparkling water from a crystal flute. She wore a soft cream-wrap blouse, black slacks, and low heels. Clean lines, quiet power. A thick file folder rested in her lap, unopened. She didn't need it. She just watched. Not with anger. Not with glee. With distance. At the check-in desk, the front desk clerk, young, mid-20s, carefully groomed, fidgeted with his tablet as Tyler and Brittany approached. His name tag read, K.I., in neat lettering. Tyler set down his luggage with a soft thud. Reservation for Collins, he said, flashing his best polished casual grin. 2 nights. Corner suite. Kai blinked once. Collins. Yes. Of course. His fingers flew over the screen. Brittany pulled out her phone again. And we're supposed to have a couple's spa credit and 2 complimentary drink tickets. Can you confirm that's in the file? Yes, ma'am, Kai said, voice slightly higher than before. Corner suite, Sequoia view, spa package, it's all here. Behind them, the concierge, a tall woman in a tailored navy suit, appeared briefly in the hallway and paused when she caught sight of Margaret in the chair. She gave the faintest nod, almost imperceptible, and turned back down the hall. Margaret didn't move. Kai cleared his throat. Just a moment, please. I need to check something in the back. Tyler frowned. Why? Just protocol, Kai said too quickly. One moment. He disappeared through the staff door. Brittany turned to Tyler. Maybe they overbooked. You know how these boutique places get. Should I double-check the app? Tyler waved her off. Relax. This place runs like a machine. Worst case, they comp us something. Margaret uncrossed her legs slowly, the sound of her heel brushing tile just barely audible. Her glass made a soft clink as she set it down on the stone side table beside her. Tyler didn't look her way, but Brittany did. She glanced once, a casual scan of the room, then froze. Her lips parted. Margaret didn't smile, just met her eyes for a second, unblinking, grounded. She picked up her folder, stood, and walked toward the back hallway. Brittany turned back to Tyler. Is that... what? Nothing, she said quickly, shaking her head. Just thought I saw someone I knew. Before Tyler could answer, Kai returned. His face a shade paler. He smiled too wide. Thank you for your patience, Mr. Collins, he said. Your suite is being prepared right now. Would you mind waiting in the lounge for a few moments? Someone will come speak with you shortly. Tyler raised an eyebrow. Why would someone need to speak to me? It's standard hospitality. Kai's voice cracked slightly on the last word. Margaret disappeared around the corner without a glance back. The front doors had closed behind them, but the temperature in the resort lobby had shifted. Kai returned, palms slightly damp, jaw clenched in a forced smile. If you'll just follow me into the lounge, Mr. Collins, Ms. Renner, someone will be right with you to go over your suite details. Tyler gave a slow blink. You've said that twice now. What exactly is the holdup? Brittany lowered her sunglasses onto her face like they were armor. We have dinner reservations. If this is about our booking, we confirmed everything. Twice. Kai hesitated. Then a voice cut through the silence. No need to escort them anywhere, Kai. Tyler turned at the sound. Margaret stood near the edge of the hallway, calm and centered, folder still in hand. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Kai stepped aside immediately, eyes flicking between her and Tyler like he was watching the weather change. Margaret walked forward slowly. Her heels clicked softly against the stone tile. 1, 2, 3. The lobby had fallen still. Even the spa music piping through the speakers seemed to lower. She stopped 4 feet from Tyler and Brittany. The same calm eyes, the same soft cream blouse. Nothing performative, nothing theatrical. She opened the folder and removed a single sheet of paper, printed on heavy cream stock, stamped in gold and sealed by the state. Deed of ownership, Red Hollow Canyon Spa and Retreat. Sole proprietor, Margaret Ellen Caldwell. She handed it to the resort manager, who had just emerged from the side corridor, without breaking eye contact. Will you please file this with today's guest records? Margaret asked. We've had some confusion at check-in. The manager, Veronica, late 40s, steel gray suit, glanced at the page, her eyes widening just slightly. Yes, of course, Ms. Caldwell. Her tone had changed, deference folding under each word like silk. Tyler frowned. What the hell is this? Margaret turned to him fully now. This resort is mine. Brittany let out a sharp, stunned laugh. I'm sorry. What? I purchased it last week. Transition completed Tuesday. I'm the sole legal owner. The staff, the property, the guest records, the suite you booked? All of it. Tyler looked to Kai, then Veronica, waiting for someone to tell him this was a prank. No one did. His voice cracked as he said, That's not possible. You're staying in a motel. I was, Margaret said evenly. Now I'm not. Brittany stepped forward, her voice climbing fast. You can't do this. You can't just hijack our weekend. Margaret turned her eyes toward her, slow and measured. Actually, I can. And I haven't hijacked anything. Your reservation still stands. Suite 204 is ready. She paused. You'll just be sleeping under my roof now. A gasp rippled from someone seated by the fireplace behind them, an older couple who had clearly overheard. Ruth, who'd quietly entered the room moments earlier, leaned against a pillar near the concierge desk and let out a low, delighted laugh. Oh my God, she whispered, mostly to herself. This is so much better in person. Tyler took a step forward, his voice low, almost desperate. Why are you doing this? Margaret tilted her head slightly. Doing what? This, he snapped, making a scene, flexing. It's manipulative. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. If you think this is manipulation, Tyler, then you've been living a very comfortable life. Veronica returned, having filed the deed into the guest records. She handed back the folder. Everything's logged, she said. Shall I escort Mr. Collins and Ms. Renner to their suite? Margaret shook her head. No need. Let them find their way. She turned and began walking back toward the corridor. Then stopped, just once, without facing them. Oh, she added over her shoulder. Your spa package is still active, by the way. Consider it my gift. Enjoy your stay. Tyler stared after her. Brittany's mouth hung open, the color draining from her face. Ruth, arms crossed, just grinned like Christmas had come early. The balcony doors of Suite 302 were cracked open, letting in warm canyon air scented with sage and desert pine. The sky had begun to burn soft orange over the cliffs, and from this height, everything looked serene, timeless. Evelyn sat in a high-backed lounge chair, barefoot, legs crossed, a linen robe tied loosely at her waist. Her phone lay on the side table next to a plate of honeycomb, rosemary crackers, and a wedge of soft cheese she hadn't touched yet. The Bluetooth earpiece chirped quietly in her ear. Paul's voice was smooth and calm, as always. He doesn't have a case, Evelyn. Not even a shaky one. She sipped her tea. You're certain? Airtight. A rustling of papers on his end. He can throw tantrums, tweet vague threats, even bark at Yelp if he wants. But he has no legal leverage. The purchase is sealed. Zoning, employee contracts, property liens, all clean. He's just mad it's you. He called me manipulative. Paul chuckled. That's rich coming from him. But I suppose we always project the sins we recognize best. Evelyn leaned back, letting her eyes close briefly. The chair cushions gave softly beneath her. Nothing like the spring-rattling motel bed from 2 weeks ago. A breeze stirred the curtains. Somewhere below, laughter drifted from the fire pit lounge. She opened her eyes. He'll try something, she said. Let him, Paul replied. Your armor's real, his is ego. She smiled faintly and ended the call. There was a knock, 3 soft taps. Ruth. Evelyn called out, It's open. Ruth strolled in like she owned the place, which, technically, she didn't. But emotionally, she may as well have signed the deed next to Evelyn's name. You look like Cleopatra, she said, plucking a cracker off the tray. I feel like her. Just without the snakebite ending. Ruth tossed her a folded magazine she'd picked up in the lobby. Brittany's online tantrum made page 8. Not page 6, mind you, but still. Evelyn unfolded it slowly. The headline read, "Influencer couple's luxury betrayal, family drama, or PR stunt?" She skimmed the first few lines. Brittany's quote was front and center. "You trust someone with your time, your energy, your life, and they go behind your back and destroy your weekend in front of total strangers. There's a special place in hell for that." "Destroy?" Evelyn said flatly. "She's in a $500 suite with room service, spa credits, and turn-down chocolates." "She's unwell," Ruth said, "and overexposed. That's a bad combo." Evelyn handed the magazine back. "Let them scream into the algorithm. Algorithms don't write deeds." She picked up the room service menu, flipped casually through the pages. "Feel like celebrating?" Ruth grinned. "I already started." Evelyn reached for the landline phone and pressed the button for concierge. "Yes, Ms. Caldwell?" The voice answered crisply. "I'd like to order dinner for the suite, the chef's tasting menu, with champagne." "Excellent choice. For two?" Evelyn paused. She looked out toward the glowing horizon, eyes calm. "No. Make it 4. 4, ma'am." Evelyn's smile was razor thin. "Send the same to Suite 204. Same time. Add a note. Enjoy your evening. No signature." She hung up before the concierge could respond. Ruth let out a low whistle. "Dinner diplomacy?" "No," Evelyn said, walking to the balcony. "It's not kindness. It's exposure. You don't really see people until you feed them what they can't swallow." From below, the lights flicked on over the fire pit terrace. The warmth glowed against the cliffs like the start of something ancient and inevitable. Ruth joined her. "Tyler's going to choke on the first bite, you know." "I'm counting on it." The pool glistened under the high desert sun, its turquoise surface broken only by the lazy ripple of floating towels and the occasional clink of glass from the cabana bar. Spa music pulsed low through hidden speakers, and the scent of orange blossom drifted on the breeze. From her balcony on the 3rd floor, Evelyn stood barefoot, holding a tall glass of lemon water. The sheer curtains behind her moved like whispers. Her hair was tied back. Her posture was perfect. She didn't need to squint. Her view was unobstructed. Below, Tyler strolled toward the pool in aviators and board shorts, carrying a cocktail in one hand and his phone in the other. He looked comfortable, unbothered. For about 30 more seconds. 2 uniformed security personnel appeared near the cabana archway, radioed, nodded, and began walking his way. Ruth stepped onto the balcony behind Evelyn, camera already in hand. "You sure about this?" Evelyn didn't answer. She simply sipped her water. "Thought so," Ruth said softly and started recording. Tyler looked up, noticed the 2 men, and slowed his pace. "Mr. Collins?" one of the guards asked. Tyler's smile faltered. "Yeah? We need to speak with you." Okay?" He glanced at the bar, then back at them. "Is there a problem?" "It's regarding your conduct on property and recent communications with resort staff." "What?" He laughed. "I asked for a towel, not a takeover." "This isn't about towels." The taller guard handed him a printed notice, Evelyn's own words at the top in bold. "Property, conduct, and trespass advisory. Effective immediately." Tyler blinked at it, then looked up. "Are you kidding me?" "Your reservation was refunded this morning," the guard continued. "You've been flagged for guest misconduct. You are no longer permitted on the premises." "What the hell are you talking about? I'm in my swim trunks." "We're prepared to give you 10 minutes to change and collect your belongings." Tyler's voice turned sharp. "I paid for this suite." "And it was refunded." "By the owner." "He didn't say, Margaret. He didn't have to." Tyler looked around like someone had moved the furniture in the middle of the night. He spotted a few guests watching from their lounge chairs, eyebrows lifted behind sunglasses. His face turned red, then purple. "You don't get to just kick people out for not liking them," he shouted. Evelyn didn't flinch. Her grip on the glass remained light. Tyler's voice got louder. "Where the hell is she? Huh? You think this is funny? What kind of psychopower trip is this?" Inside, Brittany was already at the front desk, lips trembling, eyeliner slightly smudged, arguing with Veronica. The manager's voice was calm, flat. She pointed to the signed policy slip Brittany had initialed at check-in. Ruth caught a glimpse of it as she casually walked by and angled her phone down to film. "No cameras?" one of the clerks said stiffly. Ruth smiled without breaking stride. "Oh, don't worry. This one's for the family archive." Out at the pool, the guards had heard enough. "Sir, please come with us." "Don't touch me," Tyler snapped. He jerked away and nearly dropped his drink. "You people don't know who I am." Evelyn finally spoke. One word, low and cool from the balcony. "We do." Tyler looked up. Evelyn held his gaze for 3 long, uninterrupted seconds, then turned and stepped back inside. That was all. The local police were already waiting by the valet loop. Just in case. Not in cuffs. Not dragged. Just escorted. Moved. Like noise removed from a 5-star playlist. Brittany emerged from the lobby just as Tyler was led around the circular drive. "This is illegal!" she screamed. "You can't do this to us! You don't just evict people because they're family!" Ruth followed. Sunglasses on, still recording. "Apparently you can when the family signs the paychecks." Evelyn didn't watch them leave. She didn't need to. But somewhere in Suite 302, the room service cart was being wheeled in. Chilled dessert. Sparkling rosé. A note beside the plate read, "Some guests check out quietly. Others never belonged here at all." The law office was quiet, clinical, and sunlit. An old, restored adobe building tucked off a Flagstaff side street. The kind of place where signatures changed legacies and no one raised their voice. Evelyn sat at the long walnut table across from Paul, her pen poised, her spine straight. She wore all white, not symbolic, just clean, just done. Paul leaned back slightly in his chair, flipping to the final page. "This version reflects everything you asked. Standard structure. But the beneficiary redirection is what people will remember." She scanned the document one last time. Clause 12.4. All remaining interest from resort profits, property assets, or holdings under Three Pines Holdings LLC shall be allocated in perpetuity to the Red Hollow Foundation for Foster Opportunity, a nonprofit registered this week in the state of Arizona, serving teens aging out of foster care. No Tyler. No, in case of emergency clauses. No loopholes. Paul passed her the pen. "When you're ready." Ruth stood nearby, leaned against a glass cabinet filled with old casebooks and dusty plaques. She crossed her arms. "You sure about this?" Evelyn nodded without hesitation. "I know what a second chance looks like. I'm just putting one in writing." She signed once, twice, 3 times. Paul rotated the document and slid it toward Ruth. "Witness signature, here and here." Ruth stepped forward and took the pen. "Can't believe I'm signing off on a will that disinherits someone who once unplugged your fridge during a heat wave." "That was the start," Evelyn said. "This is the finish." Paul added his own initials last, then closed the folder and sealed it with a branded clip. "Legally binding. As of 10:42 this morning, Tyler Caldwell is entitled to absolutely nothing, now or ever." Evelyn exhaled deeply, not relief. Release. She stood, smoothed the hem of her blazer, and extended a hand. Paul shook it, firm. "You did more than win. You rewrote the terms." She smiled faintly. "Let him chase closure. I'll be too far ahead for him to catch it." Ruth opened the office door for her. The desert sun outside spilled across the clay tile floor like invitation. "You want to grab lunch?" Ruth asked. "In a minute," Evelyn said, stepping out into the light. The heat pressed against her face. Not oppressive, cleansing. She walked down the steps slowly, one hand brushing the cool metal of the stair rail. Her heels clicked gently, but her shoulders were loose, her breathing steady. It wasn't about what had been taken from her anymore. It was about what she'd refused to let be stolen. And what came next. The sunlight struck the rim of her sunglasses as she slid them on. Somewhere in the distance, wind whistled through the low canyon. A nearby saguaro cactus cast a long shadow that touched the edge of her shoes. Evelyn stopped there for a moment. Hummed. Low, quiet, unhurried. The same tune she used to sing when folding baby clothes. The same one she hummed in motel kitchens while boiling pasta. Now it drifted into open sky, soft and unbothered. Behind her, Ruth watched for a beat, then smiled. "You ready to build the next empire?" she called out. Evelyn didn't turn around, she just kept walking toward the sun. The voicemail was long, weepy, and mostly incoherent. Brittany's voice cracked halfway through, caught between half-baked apologies and breathless justifications. Evelyn didn't listen to the end. She deleted it, phone face down on the coffee table, the glass screen catching the soft shimmer of late afternoon light filtering through the spa suite's gauze curtains. "She called again?" Ruth asked, sitting across from her with a grapefruit spritz in hand. Evelyn nodded, eyes unmoved. What did she say this time? That she didn't know, that she was caught in the middle, that Tyler's been spiraling and she's just trying to hold everything together. Evelyn reached for her drink, clinked it gently against Ruth's. "That I owed her clarity." Ruth snorted. "That's rich." "I thought so too." They drank in silence, the ice in their glasses cracking as it settled. Evelyn stood and moved to the console table beneath the mirror. She pulled out a folded sheet of paper, a wire transfer confirmation, and handed it to Ruth. Ruth read the top line. Recipient: the Red Hollow Foundation for Foster Opportunity. Amount: $325,000. Memo: seed capital. First 5 years of operations. Ruth blinked once. "You did it." "Yesterday," Evelyn said. "No press, no plaque, no room naming ceremony, just structure, stability. Someone waiting on the other side of nowhere with a suitcase and no place to go. Maybe next year, they'll have a place to land." Ruth folded the paper slowly, reverently. "You didn't just shut the door behind you. You built another one farther down the road." "That's the difference," Evelyn said softly, "between ending something and starting over." They stepped out onto the terrace just as the sun began its descent. The cliffs in the distance glowed like embers. A breeze carried the scent of rosemary and river stone from the gardens below. "Walk?" Ruth asked. Evelyn nodded. They strolled side by side through the stone paths of the resort garden, the landscaping perfectly sculpted, native desert brush in curated bursts, succulents blooming in slow motion, benches tucked between red rock alcoves. Everything felt earned. Evelyn paused near a spiny ocotillo bush, its green tendrils tipped with fire-orange buds. "I used to dream of gardens like this," she said, "back when I was tracking grocery coupons and counting gas miles. I'd imagine a place that didn't just look peaceful, but was, inside and out." "And now you've got it," Ruth said. Evelyn shook her head gently. "Now I'm part of it." She glanced to the far side of the garden, where a young couple sat with a toddler under a mesquite tree. The little boy had chocolate ice cream on his cheek. The parents looked tired, but soft with love. Evelyn watched for a beat, then turned away. Not with longing, with recognition. "I think," she said slowly, "the best kind of revenge isn't proving someone wrong. It's proving yourself right after they stopped believing in you." "You're not just proving it," Ruth said. You're printing the damn receipt. They reached the final curve of the garden path where the 3 pines overlook sat, a raised patio with a clear glass railing, named after Evelyn's childhood memory. She stepped forward, rested her hands on the railing, and looked out over the canyon. The air up here didn't cling to you. It let you go. From her pocket, Evelyn pulled a small folded note. One of the resort clerks had handed it to her earlier. Brittany stopped by again, asked if you'd consider sitting down, woman to woman. She looked like she hadn't slept. Said she was sorry. Said she wanted closure. Said she hoped she could count on your grace. We told her you were unavailable. Evelyn didn't crumple it, didn't tear it. She just placed it gently under a small stone on the overlook ledge and left it there. Like a leaf blown away by a story that no longer mattered. The canyon wind picked up slightly, rustling the edge of her sleeve. Ruth stepped beside her. What now? Evelyn's smile was soft, unhurried. Now? She looked out again. Now I raise something that outlives all of us. The news broke on a Tuesday, buried halfway down a regional finance blog with more debt than design. Local developer declares bankruptcy following luxury property loss, investment fallout. No names in the headline, but Evelyn didn't need them. She sat in the eucalyptus steam room at Red Hollow, warm mist curling around her as soft instrumental harp played somewhere overhead. A staff member had left a bowl of chilled citrus water beside her, and she reached for it slowly, humming under her breath. Not a song. Not really. Just a sound of something. Settled. Across town, Brittany had slipped out of her Scottsdale condo the same morning, a duffel slung over one shoulder, a wide-brimmed hat pulled low. No final influencer post, no emotional carousel slideshow. Just silence. Her digital following had started to shrink, one unfollow at a time. Sympathy fatigue was trending. Ruth appeared at the spa entrance 20 minutes later, draped in a robe and carrying a poolside menu in one hand and a rolled magazine in the other. She tapped lightly on the steam room glass. You ready to gloat gracefully? Evelyn opened the door, the steam unfurling behind her like stage smoke. I'm ready for lunch, she said. They walked barefoot through the shaded corridor to the private cabanas. Resort staff nodded with easy smiles, one of them setting down 2 chilled cucumber lemonades before retreating like well-trained theater hands. Evelyn sank into the sun lounger, the robe still loose at the collar. Ruth handed her the magazine. Page 16. There he was. Tyler. Stiff in a suit 2 shades too expensive, a stock photo clearly reused from an old interview. Tyler Caldwell, former partner at Verde Ridge Developments, has filed for personal bankruptcy following a string of losses tied to high-risk investments and private hospitality ventures. Sources cite legal complications surrounding recent acquisitions and disputes with former partners. Former partners, Ruth muttered, sipping her drink. Translation: My mom bought the empire out from under me and made me look like a footnote. Evelyn handed the magazine back without reading further. He did that on his own, she said. I just stopped cushioning it. Their lunch arrived. Grilled salmon, rosemary potatoes, a garden salad dressed in lemon vinaigrette. Light, clean, whole. Evelyn took a bite and closed her eyes. I remember when lunch was half a protein bar in the back of a borrowed car. And now? Now I give the leftovers to the kitchen staff because portion control is my biggest hardship. She smiled, dry and real. How quickly a life can pivot. Ruth reached into her tote and pulled out an envelope. This came for you. From the foundation. Evelyn wiped her hands, took the letter, and opened it with care. The paper was thick, but the writing inside was simple, handwritten in blue pen. Dear Ms. Caldwell, I don't know you, but I know that when I turned 18 last week, I had no idea what came next. Now I have a mentor, an apartment, and someone who sees me as more than a statistic. I don't know what you did or why you did it, but I want to say thank you. I think you saved me. Love, Jalen Evelyn folded the letter slowly. She didn't speak for a long moment. Then, that's what legacy really is. Not money, not real estate, just trajectory. Giving someone a direction when all they've known is drift. Ruth leaned back, watching the sun begin its slow golden arc downward. You did that, without screaming, without taking a single headline for yourself. I didn't need noise, Evelyn said. I needed permanence. She closed her eyes, face turned toward the light. The spa music shifted into something orchestral, violins brushing against the breeze. The scent of lavender floated past from the garden. Somewhere behind them, a fountain trickled quietly. In the distance, a delivery truck arrived at the front gate. Supplies for the weekend. Guests were already checking in, laughing in the lobby, completely unaware of the empire's origin story. And that was just fine. Evelyn opened her eyes. I feel unshakable, she said. Ruth grinned. That's because you stopped defending your worth and started defining it. They sat in stillness a moment longer, letting the sun do what it does best, set slowly, quietly, powerfully. Somewhere, Tyler was dialing a lawyer who no longer returned his calls. And here, Evelyn lifted her glass and toasted to nothing in particular. Just being here, just being herself. The lobby smelled faintly of sandalwood and sweet orange, the kind of scent guests couldn't place but remembered long after checkout. It was just past 9, and the golden morning light poured through the high glass panels, catching the curved edges of the stone floor and the subtle gleam of brushed brass fixtures. Evelyn walked through the lobby like someone who had always belonged in its silence. Not rushed, not posed, just present. She paused to greet Kai at the front desk, who was now confident, polished, and mid-training a new hire. Morning, Ms. Caldwell, he said, nodding. Morning, Kai. Looks like a full weekend. He nodded again. Just confirmed the last of the New Year's bookings. Fully sold out. She smiled, signing the holiday reservation ledger without needing to read it. Good, she said. Let's make it a season no one forgets. Already working on the champagne order, he said. She moved past the check-in counter, past the fountain, past the fire pit that now burned on timers at dusk and pre-dawn for early risers. Everything in motion. Everything exactly where it needed to be. Outside, Ruth waved from a shaded table on the cafe patio. She had her tablet out and a cinnamon scone half demolished beside it. You missed the breakfast rush, she said, grinning. I had to fend off 3 yoga moms and a wine influencer to get this seat. Evelyn pulled out the chair across from her. You've always had elite negotiation skills. I weaponized charm. You weaponized ownership. I like my odds, but yours come with better views. A staff member approached with a cream envelope, the kind that looked intentionally unbranded. Mail for you, Ms. Caldwell. Personal. Evelyn thanked him and opened it as Ruth watched, already halfway through her second espresso. Inside was a holiday card. Simple, thick stock. A photo of Paul and his husband standing beside a tiny, freshly planted pine tree in the desert. To Evelyn, may all your seasons be quieter than the battles that earned them. P. She smiled softly and slipped the card into her bag. Ruth tilted her head. Was that the lawyer or a Buddhist monk? Both, depending on the retainer. They finished breakfast slowly, the kind of meal without a clock. Later that afternoon, Evelyn walked the main path toward the guest cottages, clipboard in hand. She stopped to greet staff. A housekeeper folding towels in the supply shed, the head of landscaping checking irrigation valves, a new receptionist shadowing the concierge team. She didn't micromanage. She just made sure people felt seen. And then, back in her office suite, a newsletter arrived. Subject line, Red Hollow Foundation, Quarterly Update. She clicked, scrolled, stopped. There, in the middle of the page, was a photograph of 4 young adults holding up keys, standing beside a donated apartment building with fresh paint and new locks. Below it, these homes were made possible by the Collins Fund. Evelyn sat back in her chair, letting the weight of that line settle. Not bitter, not ironic, just accurate. He'd lost his name in the courts. She'd repurposed it into something that finally mattered. Outside, wind moved through the canyon in a soft hush, the sound of beginnings. Evelyn stood and stepped onto the overlook balcony. The air was crisp, touched with the mineral smell of dust and pine. She pulled her hair back as the wind swept across her shoulders, breathing deep. No weight, no noise, no residue. Just sky, just sun, just hers. She stayed like that for a long time, hands resting lightly on the railing. Guests passed below, laughing, chatting, completely unaware that the woman above them had once been forced to beg for a room of her own. She didn't need them to know. She only needed to remember who she'd been when no one else believed in who she'd become. Ruth appeared in the doorway behind her. "You look like someone who just buried the past and watered the grave." Evelyn smiled faintly, still watching the cliffs shift in gold. "They made me sleep in a $29 motel," she said, then turned, fully facing the horizon. "But I bought the resort they dreamed of, and canceled their future instead."